When I was 12 years old, a new student joined our class. Tall, with a cheerful smile and endless stories, Peter immediately drew everyone's attention. He was everything I had always wanted to be: brave, decisive, and capable of standing up for others. My shyness and modesty often kept me from speaking up and standing my ground. For some reason, though, we quickly became friends and would often hang out after school. One day during a break, Peter stood up for our classmate Allison when an older student was harassing her. Since then, she became part of our group. I was in love with her, but I never even thought about confessing my feelings. Peter had no such problems. Girls flocked to him in droves, and I began to envy his confidence while growing jealous of Allison's attention towards him. I came up with the idea of impressing and slightly scaring my friends while also proving my bravery. I suggested we take a walk through the old cemetery on the outskirts of town. Half an hour later, the three of us passed through the grand gates of the cemetery. The wrought iron patterns seemed to hold the secrets of bygone eras. I started telling a legend I had heard from my grandmother. In the early 20th century, when this area was still a village, a man moved with his family to a house near the forest. He worked as a forester and was often away. One day, while he was at work, his wife was putting their daughter to bed on the second floor. Due to a poorly built stove, a fire started. It was a holiday, and the neighbors, busy celebrating, didn't immediately hear the cries for help or the crackling of the flames. By the time they arrived to put out the fire, it was too late. The mother and her one-year-old daughter were buried in this cemetery. Overcome by grief, the man became a gravedigger and moved into a house on the edge of the cemetery to be closer to his family. As the village grew over the years, people began to disappear. The first to go missing was a couple in love. The villagers organized a search, but no trace of them was found. They assumed the couple had left for the city, as they had always dreamed of doing. When an old woman went missing, people thought she had drowned in the swamp she often visited. But when an entire family disappeared, the villagers grew alarmed. It turned out they had vanished after visiting the cemetery. When the locals stormed the gravedigger's house, they were horrified. The man not only confessed to the murders, but also described in detail how he had attacked his victims with an axe and buried their bodies in freshly dug graves. He screamed that everyone in the village was responsible for his family's death, and he would take revenge on all of them. Enraged, the villagers beat him and set his house on fire, trapping him inside. Afterward, a series of misfortunes plagued the village. A fire in the school claimed the lives of 10 students, and several families were poisoned by water from the well. The villagers believed it was the gravedigger's vengeful spirit. They built a small church on the site of his house, and the calamities ceased, but many still feared angering the spirit, so they took care of his wife's and child's graves. By the end of my story, we had reached that very grave, where beautiful flowers were growing. Despite its age, the grave was well tended, and the fence was freshly painted. The atmosphere around us was surprisingly peaceful, even soothing.
Do you actually believe these stories?
Peter asked with a smirk.
Oh, Jimmy, you're so naive. And you think they've been caring for this grave all these years just for fun?
I retorted, feeling a surge of irritation.
If you're not scared, why don't you pull out those flowers? I'm not going to do something so stupid. Oh, I get it. You're scared. Afraid the gravedigger will come for you?
Allison cut in anxiously.
Maybe we should leave? This place is giving me the creeps.
Yeah, looks like you're not the only one feeling scared. Just look at how quiet Peter's gotten.
I added triumphantly. Peter shot me a defiant look, yanked out a few flowers, and tossed them onto the ground.
Now do you believe I'm not afraid of ghosts?
At that moment, a gust of wind rustled the branches, and it felt as though everything around us had grown a little darker. We hurried to leave, but on our way back, we were suddenly enveloped by a thick fog. Then, among the trees, we saw a strange man. His face was gray and gaunt. He watched us from behind the bushes. Allison screamed, and the eerie figure seemed to dissolve into thin air, leaving a chilling sense of menace behind. We ran as fast as we could toward the exit. Suddenly, something icy gripped my ankle. I fell, instinctively throwing my hands forward. A searing pain shot through my right palm. A bloody wound gaped between my thumb and index finger. I had impaled my hand on a sharp fence post. From the bushes came the sound of laughter and approaching footsteps.
Jimmy, hurry!
Allison's voice snapped me out of my stupor. We bolted from the cemetery, only to realize that Peter was no longer with us.
Peter!
Peter!
We called out, desperate for a reply. I looked into the fog. Standing at the cemetery's entrance was that same man. His eyes glowed with cold fury, and his smile was grim and sinister. We ran to the church and pounded on the door.
What's all the racket about?
A grumpy caretaker peeked out. Our words were jumbled, but within a few minutes, Uncle John was already walking with us to search for our friend. The fog lifted, and we found Peter half an hour later near the Forester's family grave. His lifeless body was hanging from the fence. The coroner ruled it a tragic accident. Peter had tripped in the fog, and the fence had pierced his lung, causing him to suffocate. Of course, no one took our story about the ghost of the maniac seriously. 20 years have passed, and I still haven't recovered from my friend's death. I visit the cemetery and tend to his grave, hoping it will calm his spirit. The priest tells me to pray and seek forgiveness, but no prayers can quiet my fear. Every night I fight for my own life, knowing that this is my punishment. I hardly sleep, because in my dreams, my dead friend comes to me. His face is disfigured, his eyes full of pain and hatred. His half-decayed hands close around my throat. I wake up gasping for air. I don't know if I'll wake up after our next encounter.